Hi guys, Andy and Spoken Label back in the house on a Tuesday evening. Oh, and this has done one of the words then. We're quite local today as well, and I didn't realise how local we were. I just asked this young lady about this a minute ago. Now, we're in the world of fantasy today, but obviously not in the area my writer lives with today. Now, we've got a lady who's called Jan Foster. Jan's just bought a book out called, I'm trying to read it on the Kindle. I'm useless. Disputing Destiny. We're going to talk to her about that today. So now, Jan, obviously, for people who don't know you, then would you first of all like to introduce yourself to everybody? So I'll tell them obviously who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself to get us going.
Okay, hi, I'm Jan Foster, and I am an author. I'm also a business consultant by day and a mummy when I can, fit that in around everything else. I have currently got five books out now. Gosh,
Really?
I really should count them, shouldn't I? But yes, my main series is a historical fantasy series. I live in South Manchester, and you may spot some influences from the local area, from the south, from the northwest, and from Scotland, actually, in my work. So I'm pretty much a northern girl, even though I don't sound like it. I have lived up here for quite a number of years now and consider myself a northerner.
Brilliant.
Mancunian even.
Well, that's more like you got the Manc accent on you now, definitely.
Oh yeah, I can put it on when I need to.
Obviously, like you said before now, obviously we're here today to talk about your creativity, really. But where did all your writing come from originally then? Were you did you start writing when you were much younger?
Honest answer is probably no.
Oh, yeah.
My background was more in the side of theatre. So I did a drama degree, first of all, and I majored in directing and bossing people around and telling people what to do. And there was a little bit of script writing involved there, but not a massive amount. It was just writing a few plays, short things, nothing amazing. When I moved out of doing drama work, realizing that there was not a lot of money in it and that I couldn't stand living hand to mouth and waiting on the next audition and that sort of thing, I decided to go into the world of work. So I did an MBA. And at that point, my professional life kind of carried on in offices, in small businesses, running small businesses, and then eventually moving into growing businesses. And a lot of what I was doing was things like writing tenders. So I had a lot of writing through the course of my work. So I wrote a lot of marketing collateral, as I say, tenders, big ones, small ones, nationwide ones, local ones, etc. And I loved it. I really, really loved the writing bit. I loved pulling together what we could do. And then because my day job was actually sort of project management and program management, I loved delivering it and writing the reports and saying, hey, look, we delivered it in a nice little fancy report. So I loved the writing bit. And then I went on to maternity leave. And it was at the point where I was looking as to whether or not I was going to go back to full-time work, which was somewhat impractical because of my home situation for me to actually be able to do that with small children underfoot. My husband, who was traveling to America every other week for a week, so he was 50% not there. It was just not realistic for me to return to work. And he turned around and said, well, what do you really miss about work anyway? We don't, I can cover us for a bit. It's not like we need you to actually go out and go back to doing the job you were doing before. And I said, to be honest, the only thing I miss is the writing. I really enjoyed that. And he said, well, do that then. So I was like, okay, so great. Yeah, thanks. So that's what I ended up doing. And Brilliant. The first book I wrote was a children's book because I had small children at the time.
Brilliant. No, excellent. Now, obviously, I know you through and I'm going to completely botch the pronunciation of this, your Naturae, is it, sort of series? Right. Have I got that right?
I'm going to set you straight on this one because everybody asks it. I pronounce it Naturae.
Ah, right, yeah.
As in, it should have a Y in it, but it's got an AE on the end. So the Naturae series. Some people call it Naturae, Naturae. Naturae is how I prefer to call it.
Well, you did talk to us about dyspraxic, so my pronunciation and reading things goes absolutely out the window.
Well, yeah, I'm a fellow dyslexic dyspraxic. So
are you? Oh, wow. So what made you come up with the name for the series of this then, first of all, before we go into the books?
Well, a lot of the fantasy elements of it are very much based in drawing off nature. The Fae, who are the main characters, are Fae, but of all of the 4 creatures who feature in the novel, the Fae in particular are very grounded in nature, and they're ancient creatures. They're, you know, beings that have been around pre-humans, and they live in peace and harmony with nature. And if that nature is thrown out of balance, then they are thrown out of balance as well. So the main character draws her powers literally from the earth and from life. So it seemed like a fitting thing. The Latin origins of Naturae I could go into and bore you with as well, but it's generally like that. I was trying to be, you know, giving the impression that it's to do with nature, which it is very much. There's earth magic involved, and the witches also pull from magic that's bound up in life, although they don't really realise it and acknowledge it as much as the Fae do.
Right. Did you always have an interest in magic then before this series came along? Did you?
Well, I think it was yes, yes and no. I'm a bit of a whore when it comes to reading and genres, I will admit. I will read pretty much anything from political thrillers, crime, forensic, and all the way from the reality through to the completely fantastical. I grew up on Anne McCaffrey.
I used to love Anne McCaffrey, yeah.
Yeah, and do you know, I had the honour of meeting her son last
wow.
year, and it was amazing. We just sat there and talked about her, and it was great.
Oh, wow. Wow. I liked her books more about the ship who sank more, actually, than her books.
I've got to tell you this then. You liked the ship who sang?
Yeah.
Okay,
I did, yeah.
Well, I will tell you how I got into writing proper then.
Oh, yeah.
While my husband was saying, you should try writing, I thought, okay, I'll do this. And I had a phone call from a friend of mine that I knew back in my drama days. And he's currently a film producer. And I said to him, guess what, Michael? You're not going to believe this. I'm going to start writing again. He went, brilliant. I've got a project for you. And I went, what? And he goes, I've got the option on an Anne McCaffrey book.
Wow.
I was like, really? And he went, yeah. Do you know The Ship Who Sang? And I went, really?
Sorry, pardon my language.
Well, yeah, it's quite a funny one, really, isn't it? Hence me meeting Tom McCaffrey and having a chat with him. So, yeah, I was basically commissioned by him to adapt The Ship Who Sang into what turned out to be a pilot for a TV series. We were thinking film, but it's kind of difficult. But there's a series, it's actually 5 different short stories. Don't know if you've read them all.
Yes,
so I read them all
a long time ago, but yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, there's the main one, The Ship Who Sang was the first one, but then she goes on to have other adventures and meet other worlds and other people, and they sort of link through her as stories, but I created a wider world where there was an ongoing story arc as well, and you know, did all the filmy screenwriting things that you have to do, like a series bible and everything like that for it. So yeah, so that was I'm so pleased to hear you say Ship and Sang, because that was my actual intro back into writing, was script writing, because that was what I was familiar with, and working with him as a producer to package it ready to sort of put out there. And if you IMDb me, you'll see I've got a credit for it. I'm credited on that as well, so that's quite fun.
Fantastic. You just let me gobsmacked now. I know. It's one of my best mates, another mate of mine, is actually a massive Anne McCaffrey geek. And my brother is as well, actually. Yeah. So I'm not. I used to be well into science fiction when I was younger, and I could list tons of it. I don't get as much time nowadays to answer your books. That's why you get older, you don't get time. But wow, and listen, we better talk about your books anyway, okay? Because I don't.
Ship Who Sang, you know, it's my screenplay. I've written
your screenplay, yeah.
McCaffrey's read it, so.
Well, I could geek
consider
out
that a win.
I do. To quote Charlie Sheen, obviously from 2.5 Men, winning.
Winning.
Definitely.
He was such a nice bloke. He really was the loveliest chap. He was so nice, and it was a real honour to meet him and to give him the screenplay and say, look, just so you know, I did this and it was under option at the time. And
Well, I don't. Well, who knows what will happen in the future? Is all I can say with screenplays.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
Anybody wants to go into Amazon from Amazon or Netflix is listing? Get in touch. We'll pass your details over.
Love to. Yeah, ready to go.
Anyway, I'll be able to get into your book. So obviously, then
you see, that's the problem. That's what spurs me into writing novels. Is actually, I mean, I love writing screenplays. I've written a few in my time now, and I think, to be honest, because of my drama background, that's where my heart kind of is in some ways, because I like that head hopping, and you sort of imagine in your head how it's going to look on a screen or in a play. But it's out of your control. Once you've written it, as a writer, you're kind of then at the mercy of an executive saying, okay, can you just rewrite it like this so that this happens because of that budget constraint? And before you know it, your baby is kind of totally changed. And that's the nature of the industry, which is fine. And I am happy with that. If it goes anywhere, that's not a problem. But with writing your own stuff and publishing it for yourself, you're in control. And I am a bit of a control freak. So I'm not going to lie. Yeah. That's the appeal of novels.
I know it would be. It would leave me a bit gobsmacked as well, that one, that's for sure of it. Well done. Well done with that immediately. So then, obviously, we better talk about books, like I said before, obviously. Otherwise, we're going to end up with an Anne McCaffrey TV episode instead. So I want people to know about your books now. Obviously, then, tell us about a little bit more about then what made you want to go into this direction with novels then?
Well, essentially, I am also a bit of a Tudor freak. I have spent most of my life wishing upon a star that I was alive 500 years ago. I just think it was the most interesting time in English history. There are plenty of interesting times in English history, but as a century, it's pretty much up there with the 20th century for all the change that happened. Obviously, there's all the drama, the allure of the kings and queens, but I've always been much more interested in how that was how all this change and what was forced upon them in many ways, how that affected the common man, because I'm an ordinary person and I follow politics. I'm interested in global activities as well as local. And there's an effect. It does shape you as a person, and I'm interested to explore that. I'm also a bit of a nut about research. I love it. I can go down a rabbit hole all day long trying to find the name of a specific soldier that I want to cite in a book. And I've had some wonderful moments of researching for this series. So the history is where I start with the novels, and I look at key pivotal points in time when there was pretty seismic shift. And at the time of writing Disrupting Destiny, we were going through Brexit. And as you may recall, that was quite a seismic shift for our country. And I remember sort of starting to write it because I decided that, I realised actually it was very much like when Henry VIII broke from Rome in 1535. And this, he'd done it for his own personal reasons, but the effect, there was a lot of popular push for him to break from Rome, don't get me wrong, but the actual signing on the dotted line and making that decision was purely for his personal gain as the ruler. But the effect on the common man was, to polarize the entire country. And if you remember, I'm sure you do, our country felt very like that. We had neighbours that weren't talking to each other. I knew husbands and wives that couldn't even discuss it because they would just get so furious that the other one didn't agree with their point of view.
I know someone got divorced. I know someone got divorced because of it. Would you believe?
Wow, that's pretty extreme. Although I have I nearly fell out with my best friend over it. It was something I never thought he would think the way he did. Totally never thought that. But there you go. That's your call. Took us a while. We couldn't discuss it. And every time we did, it was very carefully spoken of. Anyway, so I could understand what it must have been like to have what was something so pivotal to your life as your religion and your church and everything. I mean, everything revolved around the church in those days. When you could have sex, revolved around that. You could.
I've heard of that. I have heard of that. Yeah.
When you had a day off, that was only when the church told you could have a day off. When you ate certain things, that was when the church told you could eat certain things. So to totally ditch it, throw it out out with the bathwater, not that they have any baths, that's quite a big thing. So I started with the history, and then the fantasy side of it comes in because that gives you the opportunity to explore the what ifs. And I'm a curious person. I would love to have a secret destiny. I really would. I think it would be really interesting as an observer. I think that I'm pretty sure if I lived it, knowing I had a secret that was that big, pretty sure it wouldn't be as comfortable as that. But as you may know from the story, eventually all secrets come out, and then it's how you deal with it.
Yeah. Now, what I've been say, I did spot it when I was reading the book based about the history side of it. So I spotted that immediately because it's quite an easy trick for a writer, I think, to fall down a rabbit hole when they're doing books like yours, when there's got to be some research done in it. And I got the research on it straight away. It felt pretty authentic. You nailed it pretty on. Now, obviously, with the book that I've read, Disrupting Destiny, now it was done in most of it anyway, or certainly a good chunk of it was a two-part, not a two-part storyline, two separate storylines.
Point of view.
Two points of view. That's it. Yeah. You tell I've had a long day today. 2 points of view. Now, what made you want to go down that path then? Do it that way?
Well, because I wanted it to be an adventure, number one, and very different, to show the parallels between the Tudor world, the real human world. I should explain for your listeners that the story takes place in the human world, but that there are creatures that live hidden amongst humans. And you get this from the off because you have to understand the dangers that the Fae, our Fae main characters are. They're already living in hiding. They're living a false life, if you like, and they're under threat because of that. As soon as they're exposed, then they have to move on. So you've got this constant threat of people who are not quite what they seem. And in order to kind of take that adventure side of it, you have to have the real world. And then you've got the whole fantastical world of Naturae, which is totally different. It doesn't perform like a society that you would recognize, although you might if you know anything about bees. But it's
I don't.
It was always going to be trying to show the parallel worlds, if you like, through the adventure. And that meant that basically when the main couple gets separated, Joshua stays in the present, as it were, 1535, 36 present anyway. And Aoife is taken back to Naturae to deal with what's going on there. So the dual point of view was because I can't explore parallel worlds without having two different points of view.
Yeah, no, I think it worked. I generally do that because I think you're trying to explore two different worlds, like you said before. I think you've got to have it as two distinctive worlds. You're doing like world building, like you were doing there. And I think it worked really well. I really did do it. You can see the difference.
Trickier.
And
yeah, it gets trickier in an Arctic Destiny because there's 3 points of view in that one, because you've got Aoife, Joshua, and Henry Fitzroy. So yeah, you just have to be fine. It's okay. It's all good.
So, oh wow. So obviously then, as I said before, I've not read the sequel book, I'll be honest. I've read the 2 chapters that came at the end of the first book.
Yeah.
Like I said before, the preview. But what made you want to do it like you're saying, with a prequel at the beginning of it as well?
Well, I wrote Disrupting Destiny first, and as I was doing that, I was learning a lot about the business of self-publishing. And I began to realize that one of the things that a self-published author like myself needs to do is to start a mailing list. And the general advice was given that you could give away either extracts from your book or the first few chapters, or better yet, a complete story that was set in your world, which would be you know, it would entice readers to not only sign up to your newsletter, but hopefully then go on to buy your book. Sounds easy. I took it a little bit further and decided to challenge myself, and through NaNoWriMo, not last year, year before, I think, I thought, right, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a prequel, because that could be a nice reader magnet. And it turned into a 65,000 word novel.
Oh, whoa. Fine. Oh, whoa.
That's fine. It's good. Oops. But I did do it. I finished it on November the 28th. I was so proud.
Goodness, that's really some going nice.
Well, NaNoWriMo is 50,000 words in a month. That's the whole point. It's a novel in a month.
Amanda, my wife's done that twice now, she has, and she's managed it both times, and I couldn't do it. I do NaPoWriMo, National Poetry Writing Month. I've done that for about 10 years now. I can manage that at least 30 poems in a month. 50,000 words.
That's quite
and I'd have my hair going grey, that would do.
Or are they haikus?
Well, this year's was. I cheated this year. In fact, last year's was as well. But some years I've done more. Well, I've been doing longer ones and others. Just time sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very busy, but I said, well, 60,000 words. Wow.
Well, so the prequel is. I think it was because I've written Disrupting Destiny, and the kind of the bad character, the threat, if you like, apart from the existential threat, is Queen Lana. And having written Disrupting Destiny, I was really keen to sort of show her story and perhaps show her in a more sympathetic light, because sometimes I always feel like, well, it's a bit of a nitpick I have when I read other people's stories and they've got bad guys who are just bad for the sake of being bad. And it's a little bit of a bugbear of mine, because I think nobody's born bad. You're made bad by your circumstances or your situation or your experiences. And it really irks me when I read a book and there's just like this big bad, you know, king or whatever that's invading and he wants world domination. But why? Well, you know, there's no motive behind it. So I was very conscious when I was writing Disrupting Destiny that Lana had to have a reason for why she behaves the way that she does. And then I wanted to write that in a prequel. Just also because, you know what, there's not many villain stories, is there really? I can't think of many.
Not many good villains. Not many good villain stories.
Great character stories, but not many villains. And I thought, well, you know, I'm going to take a risk. I'm risking destiny, and I'm going to write the villain story. And as well, the problem was it is a tragic romance. So I can't sell it as a romance because there's no happy ever after.
It may be a romance, but you can't sell it because it doesn't have the happy ending like you said, definitely.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could write an alternative version, I suppose, but then Disrupting Destiny wouldn't happen and Aoife wouldn't be, and it just doesn't work. So
no, you've got to do it, definitely, that one. So then also, so we have hinted before, like for pardon me, that obviously there is a second book, or is it, I don't know, would you say the third in the series? It's the third in the series, really, isn't it?
Well, it's the second in the main series, because Risking Destiny, the prequel, is set in Viking times, and I have to confess the setting was because Vikings, or who doesn't like Vikings? I love Vikings. If you're going to love history, you've got to love Vikings, haven't you? I mean, they're another force of nature that are, I think, underappreciated. So I was trying to give a more sympathetic portrayal of Vikings and less kind of invading marauders, and more, actually, do you know what? They were traders. They were, you know, they went and yes, they did dominate some parts of the world, but really they were the first explorers. Without them, we would have no global trade. Unbelievable.
Fair point.
So yeah. I've forgotten the question now.
You're not the only one. I know. Okay, move on to book number 2 then in the main series. Now, obviously, when you went into book number 2, then how did that compare to writing that? We can't talk about the prequel because the prequel obviously wrote out.
Well, I have to admit, I learned a lot of lessons from doing the prequel. Disrupting Destiny was an adventure as much for me as it is for the reader, because I had literally no idea where I was going next. It was a total pantser novel. I like to call it a planster because I had a vague idea of where it was going, but really it was the characters just kind of took it where it was going rather than me being quite authoritative and saying, no, this is what's going to happen in this scene and that scene and that scene.
Oh, I like it.
But I learnt my lesson. And in order to do Risking Destiny in a month, I knew I had to plot it properly. So I learned how to do proper plotting on that.
Oh, yeah.
And then Anarchic Destiny, because there were 3 points of view and because there were very, very specific dates for that I needed to hit. I mean, Disrupting Destiny is great because it's just sort of, oh, Christmas 1553, and there's this change coming up to the church and da 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 da. But in Anarchic Destiny, it takes place 17 years later. It's so specific. And I needed to really work out a pretty major timeline with things like how long would it take to sail from that place to that place? And if you were riding a horse, how long would it take you to ride in Tudor times on Tudor roads from that place to that place? Yeah. And is that reasonable? And so there's a lot of background work that went into it before that.
I'm always a believer. I'm always a believer with books. So I know from doing poetry books myself, the same rules apply really. Each book you write is a reaction to the previous book. Yeah. And I think as a writer, you've got to learn every book you do because no book is the same really. And I suspect that's the case here. Yeah.
By learning, then kind of what's the point?
Yeah. So I want you to ask them, by the time we get to book 20 in this series, you can have 20 points of view in that book.
Well, there's already been, I had originally planned out a whole story arc, which would take 4, possibly 5 books. And that would cover the whole of the Tudor century effectively. And there are some key dates in there that tie in with what is happening with the overall storyline. So that was my original plan. And then what's happened subsequent to making that grand plan was that I went to a pretty large conference in Las Vegas in November and had the horrible realization that much as though I love Risking Destiny as a reader magnet and as a book, I think it's a great book. I still do. I still pick it up and read it. I must have read that one more than any other book I've written, bizarrely. But it doesn't, because it's not a happy ever after, it doesn't bring people into my world as well as it could. Right. So it stands alone very well, but what I think is happening is that there's not enough people going, oh, I want to read more of those characters. They do when they read Disrupting Destiny. They both like him. Everybody seems to have a favourite. The side characters, etc., are getting some attention as well, which is lovely. But because Queen Lana and Sigurd are just so self-contained, it doesn't lead into the main series, possibly because there's 800 years time difference as well. I mean, So what I'm doing now, and again, this is all part of the learning curve. You go, you do something, it sort of works. It's working in terms of getting my mailing list up there, and I get a lot of people that love Vikings on my mailing list. Unfortunately, I don't get a lot of people that love Tudors on it. And the main series is Tudors. So I'm now doing another prequel, which will become a reader magnet as well as, obviously you can buy it, but it will also replace Risking Destiny as my reader magnet. And I hope that will mean that my people that are joining my mailing list are more engaged. And also it's a result of people saying, yeah, but your couple, they were already a couple when we meet them. I don't know anything about them. I don't know how they got together 100 years ago. I don't know. So I thought, okay, people are asking me that question. They ask it in interviews. So how did you main couple? Because it's interesting. It's unusual to have a couple already together for a series. Normally a series is the couple getting to know each other, getting together, having an adventure, and then they go on to their happy ever after. Well, my couple start with their happy ever after. It gets ripped apart to pieces, but they start with it. So because I was getting quite a lot of questions like that on interviews that I was doing with readers in Facebook groups and stuff, I thought, right, I'm going to have to just knuckle down. I'm going to have to write this prequel, and I'm just going to have to do a romance. Dun, dun, dun.
I think it shows really, Jan, with that. And this is what I think you're doing very well here. Is like you're looking at a situation, what's happened, and you're changing it. You're realizing what works and what doesn't work, and it's probably going to cost you an extra novel in the process. But hey,
It's okay.
yeah,
Agincourt.
exactly.
Yeah.
I know that your next set of books have only been the American West, anyways. If you could do radical Western next, your characters, won't you?
No, I'm sticking with this. Well, actually, yes, I was about to tell you that I'm sticking with this genre, and I'm totally lying, completely lying.
Oh, now what I always like to ask is obviously, to start wrapping up with really is obviously what plans you got next. But I think you've pretty well covered most of that anyhow, really, haven't you? So
well, I haven't. So obviously there's 3 currently published Naturae series, and I'm working on another prequel, which I've just told you about. At the same time as that, which is why it's getting a little bit confusing, another thing that's happening is I am co-authoring a historical thriller. Yeah, totally different time period. Not the time period I would particularly have chosen, but I'm getting quite into World War II now. I've been spending 6 months doing it.
Now, obviously, then with the book within development, I don't want to go into too much for you, obviously, but it is fair to ask, what made you want to co-write a book?
Well, there's 2 reasons, quite frankly. One is a business reason, which is that backlist and numbers of books that you have available are critical to business success. You know, the more essentially the more products you can offer, the wider the range of products that you can offer that are still going to interest the readers that you have, then the more likely they are to kind of buy another book that is by you. So that's purely practical sense. Second reason for this co-authoring was quite simply, I have grown to the stage after 2 years of writing now that I was feeling confident enough to take an opportunity. And an opportunity was presented with an award-winning historical thriller writer. So I thought, well, okay, I'll apply. I'll send her some samples of my work. I'll do what she asks and we'll see how we get on. And that was back in Christmas time. So,
oh wow, 6 months ago,
yeah, and we're on to the second draft of the historical thriller and talking about the next book. So,
oh, now obviously I don't want to go into too much on that. So obviously that'll come out in its own due course.
Yeah, but I mean it's a longer process because there's a lot more. It's been a learning curve for both of us.
That's what I was wondering about. Could you possibly tell us a little bit about the learning curve on it then, and how you actually? Obviously, I don't need to know the plot, obviously, but how you actually wrote the book. Then have you done like chapter and taking turns in chapters or points of view?
Well, she had an outline already in mind. I went through it and changed bits of it because it made more sense to my personal interests and the bits that she was suggesting that I could write versus the bits that she was suggesting she could write. And it was all, very open, nothing was off the table. And so we kind of we worked out some ideas on how we would section the book and write the bulk of the text, and then the other person would basically go through it, add in bits, make changes, etc., and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of this particular book takes place from 1932 in Bavaria, stretching all the way to 1954 in New York. Whoa. So it was actually easy in that sense for us to say, right, okay, I'm going to deal with the resistance in Paris, you're going to deal with 1950s in New York, and that way you're reducing the amount of time you have to do a lot of research. And she'd already got some specialist areas in there already because she writes in that time period anyway. So once we'd got that agreed, we went away, wrote our bits, had horrendous time with things like Google Docs and shared documents, and have decided never again. And now we have a very complicated system of naming conventions for Word documents that get saved up to the cloud, and then when you download it, then you have to recheck. Oh, it's very complicated. Oh wow! But it's just about working. And then one of us will stick it all together, and we've got to do that soon and send it off to the editor. which would be nice.
Well done. Well
And
done.
next time we're going to start in Scrivener and not even go through all of that nightmare.
Do you have any sort of idea when this is going to get released yet? Then, are you not sure yet?
I'm hoping towards the end of the year, because that would be a reasonable time frame. We keep toing and froing on some details, and we've got a bit of a delay because she's also a serial entrepreneur and has many other things that she juggles. So her time to devote to this is limited. My time to devote to it is perhaps limited now because of the urgency of getting my prequel written. So yeah, we wrote it frantically, finished the first draft in 2 months, which was fine. And then basically let it sit for a while. And now we're picking it back up again and going, oh, right, we need to do this now, don't we? Yeah. So the redraft and the rewrites are happening right now.
Good luck with it, definitely. Now, obviously, I know, obviously, John, people interested can find all your books in the usual places, but your main website seems to be escapeintoatale.com. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Why?
Yes.
What made you want to go with Escape into a Tale then as your website title?
Because everybody loves to escape when you read a book and you get drawn into that world. And I was told pretty early on that my work is like that. It is escapism, and that's what I wanted to bring. I've always tried to bring that element of transporting the reader back in time or to another place, and I really wanted to get across that that's what a reading is for me, and what I hope I bring to my readers is an escape into a tale. So escape into a tale.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with it, definitely, Jan, with that. So keep in touch, and I would love to bring you back on again in next year, maybe after the thriller comes out, and then we can go into more sordid details about how you nearly killed each other or disagreeing over certain parts of the book.
That's not really. Not really. It's weird because the only conflicts we have been where one of us is trying not to be offending the other one, so we're putting it very carefully, and then only to realize that actually we were on the same wavelength all along, and we just go, why were we being so careful? Why didn't we just go out with it?
Oh, brilliant. I think it shows sometimes, doesn't it, when you're co-writing. I've done lots of co-writing, and when you get to know the person, how they work, it becomes a lot easier to do it that way then.
Yeah.
And obviously, further down the line, it's like the first book is always getting used to it, because me and my wife, we've co-wrote a couple of books together, and the first one was a total accident. When the second one, it was. First one was we did a series of 7-word poems, and what we were doing was Amanda put one up online. She was trying to do it for a submission. She's a poet and novelist herself, and she put one on, I think it was Twitter, trying to write for a submission call for a 6-word poem. She couldn't manage it. She could only get 7. So she put it on Twitter, and I got clever and wrote a sarcastic response to her by WhatsApp, and it ended up becoming a book. That's why. It's like, that's what was an accident. But we've done another 3 books since together, and they flow a lot easier, probably because we knew what we were doing more than that stage. That's something it's like.
I think if you work, if you're husband and wife, then you should know each other a little bit, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
You shouldn't take offence either.
No, we don't. She just tells me I wrote crap. She tells me that, so
Yeah.
To the point. So brilliant, Jan. And listen, good luck with the books. Keep in touch now. We'll wrap up here today. So thank you again today. I've really, really enjoyed this today. I did not expect that bit about Anne McCaffrey at the beginning of it. So that was a great start.
That was funny, but thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Andy. It's been lovely to chat to you.
As always, well, Jan. So anyway, guys and girls, now that's it for today. So Alan Don Callis over Impact Wrestling says, stay safe and stay over. And we will see you all next